Hello there. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the show. And it's not just any Thursday edition of the show. Not that I don't treat Thursdays the same as I treat every other day, but on a day such as today, it feels different because the NFL season kicks off tonight. You can hear the Chiefs and the Ravens right here on Extra Sports 1300, but we have much to accomplish between now and then. So I very much appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio, online, or through the new and improved Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. As we tend to do, got started with it a little bit yesterday with the teams that I thought would make the playoffs after missing last year. This is the time for us to get all of our predictions out there. They don't count if you come in week 8 and say, I had this team all along, because you got to get in right at the beginning. And I extend you that opportunity via text or via phone. 719-247-1313. So let's start with the big question. Are we going to see the first three-peat in the Super Bowl era? Are we going to see something this year that even the almighty New England Patriots could not do? And my answer to that would be yes. Yes, we are. And at this point, with the Kansas City Chiefs, the burden of proof has to be on the other side. If you are on the side to say that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to three-peat, even though that accomplishment sounds unfathomable, the burden of proof is on the other side of the aisle. At this point with the Kansas City Chiefs, after what you saw last year, if you don't think the Chiefs are going to three-peat, then it is on you to give the reason why. Because I don't think you can simply say, well, because it's never been done in the Super Bowl era. Okay, well, why? Why can't this team do that? Last year, there was every reason possible to go against this team. In fact, I did. I did not pick the Kansas City Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. And for large stretches of that season, the Kansas City Chiefs looked far from a Super Bowl champion. But then that game in Vegas happened. And the Kansas City Chiefs from then on buckled down and found themselves, while everyone in their path buckled under the pressure of trying to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. That team last year was not the best team in the NFL on paper. In fact, you could make some semblance of an argument that every team they faced in the postseason was better than them. Whether it's by record, whether it's by accomplishment, one of those teams had the MVP of the league. But that's what the Chiefs have become. They don't have to have their best, because you will buckle under the weight of trying to perform at your best. The intimidation factor that exists now with the Kansas City Chiefs, and don't let any NFL team tell you any different. And if they try to, you put up the second half of the Bills game, the second half of the Ravens game. Heck, you just put up the coin toss of the Super Bowl. We saw multiple teams lose their minds trying to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that was not as good as they were a year before. They were vulnerable. They were beatable. And the Baltimore Ravens forgot how to run the football. Kyle Shanahan made some decisions that were quite questionable in the Super Bowl. The Buffalo Bills had Kansas City dead to rights in their building and could not beat them. Last year was the year to derail what Kansas City has going, and nobody could do it. And they faced one of the more difficult paths to a Super Bowl that we have seen in recent years when you take in the quality of the teams that they faced. And then accounting for how vulnerable they were as a team, how vulnerable they looked for much of the year, and yet they still ended up hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. After seeing that, I don't know how you bet against this team. They're better than they were last year. One of the things that was not talked about nearly enough when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs is how young they were. They're one of the youngest teams in the league. Those young players like George Karlaftis are going to get better. And the big thing that I'm looking out for tonight with Kansas City, I know that Xavier Worthy is not Tyreek Hill. It's an unfair comparison to make, but he is a field stretcher. And the Buffalo Bills let the Kansas City Chiefs get him. The one thing that they had been missing. Now, if the Kansas City Chiefs are wholly reliant on Xavier Worthy, then I don't think that they're going to win a Super Bowl, but they're not. That's Travis Kelce. That's Isaiah Pacheco. That's just the brilliance of Patrick Mahomes. It's not on Xavier Worthy to get the Kansas City Chiefs back to the Super Bowl. But he possesses something that they haven't had the last couple of years. And yet they still win. I don't know how you bet against this team. I don't know the argument that you can make against Kansas City three-peating. I know you may not want Kansas City to three-peat. Standing here right now with the Kansas City Chiefs fully healthy, no holdouts, with a better team than the one they won the Super Bowl with last year. I can't find a way to pick anybody else. But that is, of course, what's great about the National Football League. Is that it's entirely possible that Kansas City doesn't win the Super Bowl. I just don't know what argument you can make against them winning it other than just saying never happened before. It's got to be more than that. And I don't know what that is. So yeah, I'm going to sit here and predict that Kansas City wins a three-peat. And I'm going to say that they get that three-peat over the Green Bay Packers. And wouldn't it be ironic that Matt LaFleur is able to get past the San Francisco 49ers with a quarterback not named Aaron Rodgers, given how much they went up against San Francisco with arguably the best quarterback in the league at the time and could not get past San Francisco. And now Matt LaFleur might get past San Francisco with Jordan Love. It's quite ironic. But I'm buying in. I'm buying into what I've seen from Jordan Love, and I was not a Jordan Love guy coming out of Utah State. I watched the Air Force Falcons completely dominate him right here in our own backyard, and I'm like, that's not the guy. I was wrong. I think he is that guy. So I'll take Kansas City over Green Bay. But what tonight specifically is about is not about Kansas City trying to three-peat. That's for down the road. And virtually nothing, and I was quizzed by people today about my pain point. At what point am I going to falter? At what point am I going to go, oh, I don't know if Kansas City is going to do it? It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot. Like 0-4, 0-5. Certainly a loss tonight. We just saw it last year. Again, getting back to what we saw last year, and yet Kansas City still ended up hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. Last year, same exact situation. Chiefs opening up the season, they lost. But that game was far more about Detroit. And credit to them for winning. And it certainly set them up for a tremendous year. Tonight is not about Kansas City, even though it's their night and it's their banner and all that kind of stuff. Tonight, to me, is far more about Baltimore because they were one of those teams that lost their minds, that could not handle the weight of potentially beating Patrick Mahomes. They completely abandoned who they were as a football team in the second half of the AFC Championship. So what they did was they went out and got the one guy that is nearly impossible to forget about the running game in Derrick Henry. How could you not want to run the football when you have that behemoth on your team? It was actually maybe the most perfect addition to any football team in the NFL, given what happened in the AFC Championship. Tonight, to me, is about Baltimore. They need this. Kansas City doesn't need any one of these 17 games they're about to embark on. They just need enough of them that they get into the postseason. For Baltimore, it's like it was for Detroit. If they win this game, and it's not going to make up for losing in the AFC Championship, Lamar Jackson has talked about how it's about January with this football team, but the psychological impact of going into Arrowhead tonight and winning would be massive for the Baltimore Ravens. Because forget the AFC Championship. This is a matchup, Ravens versus Chiefs, Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson, that Patrick Mahomes has owned. He has a very good record against Lamar Jackson. If Baltimore can win this game tonight, there will be a lot of people tomorrow saying Baltimore's ready. Now, I'm not going to believe that until the two of them match up in January and Baltimore comes out on top. That's just where I am. I'm going to be stubborn about this. But tonight is about Baltimore. Can they beat the Chiefs? How does Derrick Henry look? because I know he's a freak, but we know the history with running backs at a certain age. All I need to see from Kansas City, and I think what you're going to get once, if only just once, is Patrick Mahomes airing it out to Xavier Worthy just once, just to send a message. And this Kansas City Chiefs team is not above sending messages. One pass over the top to Xavier Worthy, just to show the NFL, like, yeah, we got one of these guys again. That's all I need to see from Kansas City. But with Baltimore, I need to see them win. If they lose tonight, how can they be taken seriously as a contender to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs when it really matters? So tonight is far more about Baltimore. And I think they're going to be right there. I think we're going to get Lamar against Mahomes again in these playoffs. But I'm far more intrigued, far more interested in what I see from Baltimore tonight than what I see from Kansas City. Because what last year taught us is that the regular season borderline does not matter. It's just about to not matter at all when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs. Take your thoughts on tonight. Take your Super Bowl predictions. 719-247-1313. We'll get a little bit deeper into this thing. You know where I think this NFL season is going to end up. What is the playoff field going to look like? Getting into that. Come up next. Drive Time Sports. The NFL is back, people. The start of the pro football season is tonight, which means it's time to report for game day at Hooters of Colorado Springs. Hooters of Colorado Springs has craveable wings, ice cold beer, plenty of big screen TVs, and the world famous Hooters girls, making it the #1 franchise in the league. Catch the fan filler while you're there. 10 boneless wings, fries, and a drink for only $16.59. Get into Hooters of Colorado Springs for all the football action. So we end with Kansas City beating Green Bay in this year's Super Bowl. That's what I have. But who else is going to be in the tournament, so to speak? Let's start with the NFC. I don't think there's any reason to go away from the San Francisco 49ers in that division. They may even challenge for the top seed in the NFC, but the West is pretty easy. A lot of people like Seattle this year, which is interesting given that the Broncos play them on Sunday. So you get a look at this team that a lot of people like. They got Baltimore's defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, to be their head coach. Very young guy. First year without Pete Carroll in forever. So Seattle's interesting for sure. And I think a lot of people's inclination, not that anybody thinks that Seattle necessarily is going to be better than San Francisco, but just the idea you look at some of the wild card teams with 3 wild card berths available, there's some opportunity for someone to step in there. I still think that the Rams are probably the second best team in that division. Getting rid of Ernest Jones the other day was a bit of a head scratcher, though, when it comes to the Los Angeles Rams. So I don't have the Rams making the playoffs, but I think they may end up being the second best team in that division. I think San Francisco kind of beats up on their division en route to a fairly easy division title. In the South, I do like Atlanta. I do. I'm curious to see what Carolina does with Dave Canales now coaching up Bryce Young. It has to be better than it was last year, but to think that Carolina is the best candidate from going worst to first, I don't see it. New Orleans feels like a mess right now. Baker Mayfield has been quite inconsistent in his career, so think me backing Tampa to go back-to-back in division titles, I'm not there. Atlanta adding Kirk Cousins certainly improves things. They had one of the worst quarterbacking situations, and not that I am a huge fan of Kirk Cousins. I know his limitations, as do you. He is far superior to anyone the Falcons have trotted out in recent years. So I think that alone might be enough to win what is a pretty bad division. But then you add Justin Simmons, you add Matthew Judon. The Michael Penix draft pick was puzzling, but everything else about this Falcons team is about going all in on this year. And I think at least that nets them a division title. The East, look, we're going to get inundated with Dallas Cowboys stuff this year. For sure, they're going to be one of the most talked about teams, as they always are. But this year, I feel like maybe even more so, given the uncertain future of Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy. But look, from a roster perspective, they're just flat out better than most of the teams in the NFL. I don't love what's going on with Dallas. I certainly don't think there's any reason to believe that a Dallas Cowboys season this year will end any differently than any one of the last, 5? But they're going to win a lot of games. They may even win that division. But I really like what Philadelphia has done. I think you could chalk up a lot of last year to a Super Bowl hangover, a lot of figuring out of Jalen Hurts. But now you go out and you get Kellen Moore, you get Vic Fangio, you get sharp offensive and defensive minds to help out Nick Sirianni. I love what the Eagles did in the draft. And that's almost every year statement. Howie Roseman always seems to have one of the better drafts of any team. I like what they've done. They were intentional about helping out the secondary. I don't think they will be an elite secondary by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think they're better. You add Saquon Barkley, a Saquon Barkley revenge season. Look at me, New York Giants. Look at what you lost. I think Saquon Barkley is incredibly motivated, and I think he's going to be great in that Eagles offense. They could end up getting a wild card here, but they're making the playoffs. And that division is going to come down to the wire between Dallas and Philadelphia. And I talked about this yesterday with my new playoff teams. I think the NFC North is scary. I think there are 3 teams in that division that can make a legitimate case for the postseason, most certainly, but even being a problem in the postseason. I'm not going to go quite that far with Chicago yet. I do think Chicago is a wild card team. Detroit and Green Bay are certainly on the short list of teams that can represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. I like Green Bay better than I like Detroit, and I think it's imperative that Green Bay wins this division. There are some teams where, like for Philadelphia, I think is a perfect example of a team that certainly wants to win the division, certainly can help out their own cause in the postseason by making the road to the Super Bowl go through Philadelphia for as long as possible. But I don't know that I feel a ton different about Philadelphia, whether they win the division or whether they're one of the top wild cards. With the NFC North, I do really think Green Bay has to win that division. And it's going to be tough because Jared Goff plays outdoors like twice. But I think Green Bay needs to win that division. I think that is a stated goal of theirs. And I think they do end up winning the division over the Detroit Lions and then the Bears because they are better than Seattle, LA, Arizona, Carolina, New Orleans, Tampa Bay. They get a wild card berth as well. So San Francisco, Atlanta, Green Bay, and I think Dallas. I think Dallas wins the division, but it's not about that with them. That's not an accomplishment. They've done that before, and then I'll take Philly, Detroit, and Chicago to be my wild card teams in the NFC. In the AFC, no surprise. Kansas City wins their division. I don't think any of these 3 teams are ready to knock Kansas City off the top of the division quite yet. So I think it's 9 straight division titles for them now. I think Miami, I put Miami in the same boat as Green Bay. I think they need to win their division. For me to take Miami seriously as a contender in the AFC, they got to win that division. because we know the story when Tua's like the old Tampa Bay Buccaneers teams of Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks, Tony Dungy, can't win in below a certain temperature. That's now going around about this Dolphins team. So I think Miami needs to win their division. I think they will. I think the Jets will finish second in that division. I think Jacksonville bounces back with a healthy Trevor Lawrence and wins that division. And I think Cincinnati and Joe Burrow have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder just because they lost out on an opportunity they thought was theirs last year. I think Baltimore cares very much about tonight, but I think the regular season doesn't mean as much to Baltimore at this point. So I could see Cincinnati racking up the wins, winning that division, and Baltimore getting a wild card spot. And then the last team I have getting in is the Chargers, just barely over Buffalo and Houston. I think the last wild card spot comes down to those three teams. I think Cleveland could be in there, but I got to see what Deshaun Watson is. But I think Jim Harbaugh gets it right enough with a couple of teams that I don't think very highly of in the AFC West. I think the Chargers get enough wins to vault themselves over teams that may be in slightly more difficult divisions, especially when it comes to Buffalo. So Kansas City, Cincinnati, Miami, and Jacksonville, division winners. Baltimore, the Jets, and the Chargers are the wild cards. 719-247-1313. Who you got in the postseason? Who you got in the Super Bowl? Today's the day to do it because two very popular teams in terms of people's Super Bowl picks are playing tonight. Can alter tomorrow based on what you saw. I don't write the rules. I just enforce them. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll go away from football for a moment and talk a little hoops because the national media has started to pick up on something locally that we have been on for a while when it comes to the Denver Nuggets. And I'll explain it more in depth next on Extra Sports 1300. Saturday evening, the Air Force Falcons open up the Mountain West schedule with the San Jose State Spartans, led by former Navy coach Ken Niumatalolo. If you would like to be there at Falcon Stadium at 5 o'clock, I have a 4-pack of tickets to give away to the 13th texter to text Falcons and their name to 719-247-1313. That number is also good for your thoughts on the day that the NFL season begins. Steve G says, having picked up more outside and Mahomes and Kelsey staying healthy, they will be there in the end. Don't see any AFC team threatening them. Dolphins still need a better O-line and have to play in Miami. The one player that I'm surprised I haven't heard anybody bring up on the text line is Joe Burrow. Now, I don't think that Cincinnati as a whole is better than they were a few years ago when they beat Kansas City. But Joe Burrow would certainly be one of those people if you had to say, if not Kansas City, then who? Because I think Joe Burrow might end up being MVP of the league. This will be the last time that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins all play together. I think they're going to all look, when you have a guy in a contract year like T. Higgins, I think he's going to be looking to be very productive. Jamar Chase maybe trying to send a bit of a message. Joe Burrow missing time last year. I think that's where I'd go with MVP. And I just got done in the last segment saying that I think that Cincinnati ends up winning the AFC North. That's really what you look to. I know I've heard a lot of people like Dak Prescott, MVP. Like, it would be a fun story. Although I'm sure Jerry Jones would be like, see, look what happened. I motivated him. And he became the MVP of the league, while most people are looking at it like Dak thumbing his nose at Jerry Jones. But Jerry Jones is quite delusional, I think, would be the best way to describe it. So I've heard a lot of people say, well, what about Dak for MVP? Well, yeah, if he wins the games that he needs to win. And what I mean by that is, why did everybody bail on the Cowboys last year? Because there were only like 2 games where you're like, this is what the Dallas Cowboys are. This is what we're going to judge them on. And they came up short. Right? And I look at that for Dallas this year. I'm looking at their schedule right now. Home game against Baltimore could be one of those. A home game against Detroit, at San Francisco may be the best example of that. I don't think any game in the division. And I know Philadelphia is a really good team. I like Philadelphia, but that's what Dak Prescott has done for years, is win games in his own division. I look at those games and I say those are the ones that if people are serious about the Dak Prescott MVP stuff, home against Lamar, home against Goff, and at San Francisco, 2 of those games are in a 3-week stretch. And especially San Francisco, they're coming out of a bye. Dak Prescott better light it up in that game. But that's it. I mean, Dak Prescott last year was was statistically the best quarterback in the NFL. Now, Lamar had the rushing numbers and stuff to kind of help his case, but I'm talking as a pure passer, Dak had some of the best stats of anybody, and he wasn't even a serious contender. So if it's going to be Dak, it has to be those games. And if he plays extremely well in those games, especially that one in San Francisco, then I think he's going to be there. I think a lot of people would like to back Dak in this, I don't want to say feud, but this little thing he's got going on with Jerry Jones not wanting to extend his contract right now. I think Josh Allen is another one that you look at and you say, as a story, Josh Allen could fit the MVP if he can still lead Buffalo to the postseason with everything that they have lost. How could Josh Allen not? If he leads Buffalo to the playoffs, which I don't think will happen, but if he does, he'll be in that mix. But I think the NFL voting for these awards very much mirrors the overall feel of the league. Right? It's not about the best story. It's not about the feel good. It's usually about numbers. Numbers and team success. And it's what you do in those handful of primetime games when everybody is watching. That's what it's about. And I think Joe Burrow's going to check all those boxes. He's going to win enough. He's going to put up big enough numbers. And I think he's going to play well in the games where everybody is watching. And then, of course, you have number 15 in Kansas City. That if this offense opens up with the addition of Xavier Worthy, could Mahomes be back to putting up astronomical numbers, which makes people just say, oh, I can't go away from Patrick Mahomes? That would be the list to me. Because and I don't include anybody at another position, because I tried to do that last year. I tried to make the case that Tyreek Hill was the NFL MVP because I looked and I said, none of these quarterbacks are having that great of a year. And it wasn't even really taken that seriously. The idea that a non-quarterback could be the MVP. And they went to Lamar Jackson for a year that wasn't nearly as good as some previous Lamar Jackson seasons. Just the way the league works. If not last year for a non-quarterback winning the MVP, I'm certainly not taking a non-quarterback MVP this year. From the 719, Cowboys, Dolphins in the Super Bowl. Cowboys win at 34-21. Micah Parsons has 3.5. This feels like you bet. Did you bet on this? All of this? This feels like this is what I bet on. Micah Parsons has 3.5 sacks with a forced fumble recovery, is named Super Bowl MVP over Prescott, and with that gets a massive extension. Dak gets the extension. Even after the Super Bowl win, Cowboys fans want to move on from McCarthy, but know that with the win, he'll now be cemented for at least 10 more years, unfortunately. I like it. I mean, especially the last part, I feel like could absolutely happen. I kind of think Dax. I don't think he needs to win a Super Bowl or an MVP. to get the extension. I think he will. I think Micah Parsons is going to get paid. I think this is Jerry Jones thinking he's going to motivate his guys. And he'll look for any possible, well, Dak won MVP, or Dak, these numbers went up, or we finished with a better record, or we won one more playoff game. He'll find something to point at and say, see, all of this, you guys were telling me that I was insane. Look, we did this better in this regard. And then everybody wins, right? Jerry Jones gets to take credit. Dak Prescott gets paid. Micah Parsons gets paid. But Mike McCarthy is held responsible for the fact that they didn't go to the Super Bowl, and they're moving on. I'll say this, Cowboys-Dolphins would be a fun matchup. And I get Cowboys fatigue during the season as much as the next guy. But it'd be something different. It would have a lot of star power. I wouldn't hate Cowboys-Dolphins, but I think you're identifying two of the teams that are good, but have some serious question marks. But I like it. A lot of effort put into that prediction. Very specific. I wanted to get to this. Zach Lowe moving to basketball. Zach Lowe made a comment on his podcast that to me signals that the national media is now catching up to where we have already been here locally. But he mentioned the disconnect going on potentially between Michael Malone and the Denver Nuggets. He said there are rumblings that the coaching staff and front office, or at least the head coach and the front office, aren't exactly seeing eye to eye in Denver to a degree even unusual for the NBA. That should not surprise you, but the fact that this is being talked about on a national level certainly adds some significance here. What? About a little less than 2 months away from the season starting up. But we know this already. We know that there's a disconnect. But once it rises to a national level, it's different. And it becomes a bigger story. And Michael Malone gets asked about it, and Calvin Booth gets asked about it. I know they're not seeing eye to eye. I don't think they've seen eye to eye on a lot of things since Calvin Booth took over. Calvin Booth is not Michael Malone's guy. Calvin Booth is Tim Connolly's guy, right? It doesn't always sync up. Michael Malone and Tim Connolly got along great. But it was Tim Connolly's decision to hire Calvin Booth. And I don't think there's that relationship. And I think when Tim Connolly left, I think Michael Malone, as many coaches do, perhaps tried to assert himself a little bit more in terms of the power dynamic in that Nuggets organization. And here he's being told by his general manager that he's got to play the young guys, that we're going to let Kentavious Caldwell-Pope walk. We're not going to go into the luxury tax threshold. And I think KCP going is what is leading to this becoming a national story now. Because before we're talking about guys 9, 10, 11 on the bench. Now we're talking about a member of the starting five. I can't imagine Michael Malone, as much as he likes Christian Brown, love the idea of KCP leaving. But it's one of the prevailing storylines of this upcoming season. Michael Malone said all the right things, said he understood it as far as not pushing for the number one seed. And well, that comes along with giving the young guys some more time. Is he going to do it? Remains to be seen. But now something that we have known for quite a while on a local level has now reached a national level. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll shift to the Denver Broncos. At what point is all of this too much for Bo Nix? I'll explain next. Drive Time Sports on this NFL kickoff Thursday. Ravens and Chiefs coming up. Our coverage from Westwood One at 5:30. Kickoff about 6:20. And you can hear it. Same place you're hearing this show, whether it's on the radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or through the new Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. Tonight is the official kickoff to the NFL season, but around these parts, the unofficial kickoff. Maybe this is the soft opening tonight, and the grand opening of the 2024 season is on Sunday afternoon when the Denver Broncos take on the Seattle Seahawks and Bo Nix makes his first start in a game that counts and a game that matters. And every step of the way, Bo Nix has shown that he is capable of handling what the Broncos, Sean Payton, the league, even a couple of opposing teams, albeit in preseason action. And he's been able to take on all that stuff and pass with flying colors. His ability to learn Sean Payton's offense, his ability to win over the players. Clearly, he was able to do that in grand fashion because they named him a captain. He played extremely well in his 2 preseason games. What I wonder, and I got to imagine they're having a similar conversation in Chicago right now, maybe even Washington, but I don't think Jaden Daniels, was Jaden Daniels named a captain? I did not see. I did see Caleb Williams was named a captain. What I wonder is, at what point does this become too much for Bo Nix? Like, the amount of praise that's being heaped on him, of both internally and externally. A lot of people making the Broncos their trendy playoff pick. People talking about Bo Nix for Rookie of the Year. I mean, it's almost, they talk about the fact that he's the lesser talked about quarterback so much that he's almost not anymore. Because in a normal circumstance, you would say the 6th quarterback taken in any draft, even if it's in the first couple of rounds, is just not nearly going to get talked about as much as the first 5. But now Michael Penix isn't playing. Drake May isn't playing. There's only 3 of them. And yes, the guy in Chicago is getting the most conversation. Absolutely. But I don't think Bo Nix is being treated like the 6th quarterback taken in this year's draft. He's certainly not being talked about as the 6th best quarterback in this class. And I guess when I ask if it's, at what point is it too much for Bo Nix, I'm talking about primarily Bo Nix. Right? He's been stoic. He's been unaffected, has looked calm, composed at the podium, on the field, in practice. Like, at what point does he look frazzled? At what point is it too much on his shoulders, given that he is the 6th quarterback taken, that many teams believed he was the 6th best quarterback in this class? The Ringer just came out with their rankings. They ranked him the worst quarterback in the NFL. So there's still some of that. But the overwhelming conversation around Bo Nix has been positive. And that's to his credit. Right? Like Bo Nix has in many ways earned a lot of this praise. But I don't think this is something he's ever encountered before. Right? This isn't Auburn. This isn't Oregon. This is the National Football League. This is a proud franchise that is dying to have a franchise quarterback. Do you see Broncos fans on social media? They're losing their minds over Bo Nix. Now, I don't think that stuff on social media is going to get to Bo Nix, but it's just everything. And even Sean Payton yesterday made sure he pointed out the fact that he's never had a rookie be named the captain. Like Sean Payton has gone from trying to protect this guy to now throws around Drew Brees' name, talks about how Bo Nix is uncommon for quarterbacks he's been around and rookie quarterbacks, and now Sean Payton can't even help himself. He's far less measured. So is it that he knows? And he's the cat that ate the canary and we're all about to find out? Or is he getting a little carried away? I have no doubt that Bo Nix is ready to be an NFL starter week 1. But he's an NFL starter week 1 of his rookie year for a franchise that is starving for a franchise quarterback. He's just been made the captain. Trendy pick for rookie of the year. Trendy pick for the Broncos to go to the playoffs. Colin Cowherd, who I love, can't shut up about Sean Payton and Bo Nix. It's all he wants to talk about. And I wonder at some point if any of that will ever be too much for Bo Nix. He seems very robotic. I don't want to say robotic because that stoic. He seems very stoic about all this. All of this doesn't surprise him. Like none of this surprises him. He doesn't. He's very measured. Like again, he's been impressive to this point. But when Seattle starts disguising their coverages and bringing some exotic blitzes that he's not ready for, is some of that frustration going to start to set in? Is it going to beget a bad interception? When is all of this going to be too much for him? And then the second part of that is, when is this going to be too much for the fan base? They want everything heaped on Bo Nix, all the accolades, all the everything. In fact, a large portion of the fan base would be quite outraged if Bo Nix was not named a captain. But all of this stuff that's being said about him, internally, externally, he gets the captaincy first since Floyd Little in franchise history, first time in Sean Payton. I have worried throughout this preseason if there was a point where the hype is now exceeding the quality of player Bo Nix is. His ceiling is Alex Smith. Good career, good guy, pro's pro, everything that's right about the league. But he's not him. Right? I just wonder, all this stuff just keeps getting piled on and piled on and piled on. And then all of a sudden, Bo Nix is not the 6th quarterback taken in the draft. Not a guy that was graded by many as a 2nd round quarterback that was taken with a high 1st round pick as a reach. I've seen this fan base turn on quarterbacks quickly. I think Bo Nix has about as long of a runway as anybody since Peyton Manning. Okay, I'm not talking about after week 1. It shouldn't be after week 1. My goodness, can we let the guy have one game? But 3 games, 4 games? Sean Payton talked about how important this first month of the season is. What if the Broncos go 1-3? What will the conversation about Bo Nix be then? And if I was sitting in Chicago, I'd be saying the same thing about Caleb Williams, because I think Caleb Williams deserves a lot of what is being heaped on him, but you have to worry at a certain point whether it gets out of control. And the difference between Caleb Williams and Bo Nix is I'm actively participating in the heaping onto Caleb Williams. I believe that he's going to put the Bears in the playoffs. So I understand that I'm feeding the beast a little bit here. But I wonder at what point, for 2 guys that we keep getting told over and over again, nothing affects them. Caleb Williams, more laissez-faire. Not to say that he's not a competitor, but just he lets things roll a little bit, right? People get on him about his nails, and he just doesn't care, right? It doesn't bother him. But with Bo Nix, it's a little less laid back, a little bit more stoic, though, a little bit more intentional, that he seems to take all of this stuff and try to acknowledge its importance, but also minimize its impact. They are both very impressive when you hear them speak. They're both have been impressive on a football field. So again, I'm not saying that anything has gotten too far out of control quite yet, but it's just every day that goes by, there's another quote, another prediction, another accolade. And there will be a point. Bo Nix will not look stoic through 17 games. He's going to look angry. He's going to make a dumb mistake. How he reacts to that. And if all of this praise that is being heaped upon him by his own coach and many other people, if it ever gets to him, they keep testing it. Right? I'll say that. Every day they do something else. A little something else. Name him the captain. Okay, is he okay? He's okay. Sounds the same. Okay, cool. Tomorrow we're going to do this. These are rookies. And you wonder how they handle all of this. Our first signs really will be on Sunday, yeah? When they play for real. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports on the way after we take a quick look at traffic. Congratulations to Eric. He won a 4-pack of tickets to see Air Force open up Mountain West play against San Jose State. And if you're like, wow, I would like to go. Well, I happen to have another 4 tickets, 2 pair of tickets to see the Falcons take on the Spartans this Saturday evening at Falcon Stadium. 5 o'clock is the kickoff. If you are the 13th texter to text Falcons and your name to 719-247-1313, you will win a 4-pack of tickets to see the Fightin' Falcons take on the Spartans. I don't want to dampen the optimism surrounding the start of the Broncos season, because I think there is a lot of reason to be excited and interested in what Sunday and this season will bring. But it is partly part of my job to report news. This whole week 2 thing might be in doubt. Because as excited as you are for week 1, you're very excited about week 2 if you're a Broncos fan, right? Home opener, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are visiting. I don't know what's going to happen. More specifically, I don't know who's going to be quarterbacking the Steelers. Russell Wilson has a tight calf again. And it's the same calf that was toy earlier. Caused him to not get as much work in leading up to the regular season. Right now, it's at the abundance of caution stage, according to Mike Tomlin. Just going to check on him. Just going to make sure. Just going to see. But when you talk about the most anticipated debuts, the most interesting debuts for quarterbacks across the league, Russell Wilson is up there. And forget the Broncos angle for week 2 for a minute. Right? Obviously, locally, of course, a lot of people around here will be very curious to see how Russell Wilson does in Pittsburgh in week 1. But even across the NFL, people are interested. And it's for, I guess, the polar opposite reason that people are intrigued by Caleb Williams or Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels. It's the start of their careers that are interesting. It's the potential end of Russell Wilson's that people are wondering about when he takes the field for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is not good. Now, I will say that if they, let's say he can't go Sunday and Justin Fields plays, it is much easier to replace Justin Fields with Russell Wilson than the other way around. If Justin Fields plays great in a dome stadium indoors with a team that, although I very much like the additions of Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons, is still a defense with some question marks. If Justin Fields comes out and plays extremely well, that will make it a bit more difficult for Mike Tomlin. But it's much easier to replace Justin Fields with Russell Wilson than the other way around because you're signaling, okay, this might be the end of the man's career. Whereas Justin Fields, that athleticism at that age, he's going to find gainful employment in the NFL somewhere else. Russell Wilson may not. So an interesting little wrinkle as we head into the majority of week one after tonight's opener. And after, I keep forgetting the game tomorrow. We got another primetime game tomorrow between two Super Bowl contenders. We get 4 Super Bowl contenders in 2 days. Philadelphia and Green Bay meeting in Brazil tomorrow. But then we get to the bulk of week one on Sunday. So we'll see where Russ is at tomorrow. But that is not the fact that it's the same one. And these soft tissue things, they can be tricky. They can linger. They can come back. They can flare up. Seems like maybe that's what Russell Wilson is dealing with. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Gave my playoff predictions, my Super Bowl prediction earlier on in the show. If you missed it, San Francisco in the West, Atlanta in the South, Green Bay winning the North and representing the NFC in the Super Bowl, Dallas winning the East, then Philadelphia, Detroit, and Chicago being the wild cards in the NFC. And then I had Kansas City, Jacksonville, Miami, Cincinnati as your division winners, Baltimore, the Jets, and the Chargers as the wild cards. Chiefs come out of the AFC, Chiefs three-peat. But as I'm going through with some of my predictions, the projected order of finish, some other things that came out of it. I don't think Pittsburgh has a winning season. And I get it. It's been Mike Tomlin's been doubted before. And Mike Tomlin never has a losing season until he does. Right? Until he does. And I think that's this year. I did not get Pittsburgh to 9 wins. I can't get there. I think Mike Tomlin, as he tends to do, will get more than maybe what I actually expect him to get out of this football team. But I don't think it's enough. Now you throw Joe Burrow back in the mix in that division. I think that was a gift when you really look at it. How much did it help Pittsburgh that Joe Burrow got hurt? And now he's back. And you look at, Aaron Rodgers being back. Does Pittsburgh play New York? Yeah, they did. Yep. Going to say, losing my mind. I thought that the so the Jets are a better team. And Joe Burrow's coming back, so that's 2 more matchups. Indianapolis gets Anthony Richardson back. Denver thinks they have their guy in Bo Nix. I can't see Pittsburgh getting to the 9 wins. I don't know if the Tennessee Titans are going to win a lot of games, but I think they're going to be one of the most fun watches. I think Will Levis is just going to chuck the ball around. They don't have Derrick Henry anymore, and I know they have Tony Pollard, and so they have a running game, but they don't have the running game they had with Derrick Henry. I think they sling it all over the place. I think it's going to be quite jarring, honestly, if you're a Titans fan. No Derrick Henry and watching your football team air it out all the time. I think that's what you're going to see in Tennessee. I don't think they'll win a lot of games, but they might be fun to watch. And I think that Bo Nix's football team wins more games than Jaden Daniels' football team. I think at least there will be that. Bo Nix. I'll get more into the Broncos, of course, tomorrow. We'll dedicate a whole show almost to Broncos and getting in all the predictions. But I do think the Broncos finish with more wins than Washington, if only just. If only just. Everything else you could pretty much. The NFC South not going to be very good. I think Houston takes a step back this year. I think regardless of who their quarterback is, Cleveland's going to be in the mix. I just think ultimately they fall short of the postseason. And I don't know how New England wins one football game this year. I know they will. They won't go over. But I don't know what game I'm going to point to right now and say, oh, New England's going to win that game. And it creates a very interesting dynamic because New England does not need a quarterback. Could we see a team? I heard Dan Orlovsky on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday talk about this fantastical scenario in which the Raiders, by way of trading Devontae Adams, end up with the draft capital necessary to end up with both Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. Wouldn't that be a gut punch to people who root for both the Buffs and the Broncos? I think it would be very difficult for a team to end up with both of those guys. But if there's a team that would have the motivation to do it, and it would not be totally crazy, could be the Raiders. But if New England's the worst team in the NFL, and let's say the problem is the Giants, because I think the Giants are going to be right up there. But could we have a situation like we had a couple years ago with Carolina? Team like New England says, we've got our quarterback already. And we'll accept this king's ransom for a team like the Raiders or New Orleans, Pittsburgh. I don't know. Pick some of the bottom feeders in the NFL this year. But not the very bottom feeders, but the teams just outside. We'll take this king's ransom offer from this team to jump above the Giants to take the quarterback of their choice, number one, and we'll just use all of these assets to get Drake May better. I know the Patriots aren't tanking, but it's not a bad thing if New England ends up being the worst team in the league. Because I think there will be teams that will be willing to offer quite a bit to go up to get Shedeur Sanders or Drew Aller or Carson Beck, your quarterback of choice. 719-247-1313. Take your NFL predictions, Super Bowl MVP, divisions, your Broncos picks. Take all of them here. I did want to let you know that you can now use your own body's healing properties to revitalize your achy joints. Attention, football fans. It's time to report for game day at Hooters of Colorado Springs. Tonight, grab a Big Daddy, a Bud Light, or Michelob Ultra for $5.19, or catch the Fan Filler, 10 boneless wings, fries, and a drink for only $16.59. Get into Hooters of Colorado Springs for all the football action beginning tonight. Speaking of tonight, it's the Ravens and the Chiefs. And it's our first opportunity to place wagers, unless you've been getting into the futures, which I've been dabbling in the futures. But in terms of game betting, I do not bet on preseason games because I don't feel like a responsible adult if I do. So I save that for the games that count. Chiefs 2.5-point favorites for tonight, minus 142 on the money line. And the over-under tonight is 46.5. I think this game is not going to be a shootout. Now, 46.5 is not a shootout number. And I think it's gone down a little bit as people are like, wait a minute. Two good defenses. Both teams want to run the football. First game out. Maybe not everybody is clicking. That's not a high hurdle to pass, though. 46.5. I might go the under. I hate betting the under. I hate it, but I don't think a ton of points are going to be scored tonight. And I think the better bet is on Baltimore. And I talked about this. You know, tonight means far more to the Baltimore Ravens than it does the Kansas City Chiefs. What we learned last year is that the Chiefs can absolutely mess around, lose games that they shouldn't, not have a fantastic record, and still win a Lombardi trophy. I think tonight's about Baltimore. I think it's about winning that game, trying to get this series between Lamar and Patrick Mahomes to even out a little bit. Mahomes will still be leading after it. But I think I think the value is with Baltimore. Taking Baltimore plus the points is kind of where I'm at with it. And I think this will be a close game. Anyway. But I think I would go with the Ravens plus the points. Still a chance that Kansas City wins tonight. But I think I would feel better tonight given the circumstances and the stakes. I think they're higher for the Ravens. So I'm going to back them tonight. Plus 2.5. And on Circa Sports Colorado app, you get even money for that. Even money for Baltimore plus 2.5. And that's what I've come to expect from Circa Sports since I downloaded the app and started using it, is that I get most often, I get the best prices on Circa as opposed to other places. I still have other apps on my phone but I just use them for shopping. I inevitably make my bet on Circa Sports Colorado because I get the best lines there. And that's what they strive to do. Like other sports books, they'll get you in with these great offers of all this free bets. And it's great. I'm not saying it's not. But if you're going to stick around and be using your app, you want the experience after those free bets go away to be the best that it can be. And that's what Circa has cornered the market on. And they don't limit players based on their winnings. Other sports books will do that. Circa Sports doesn't. And they have the same great people who are behind Circa Sports in Vegas. They have them behind this app. So download the app today, Circa Sports Colorado. Go ahead, continue to shop around if you want. I think you'll like what you see at Circa Sports Colorado. Must be 21 years or older and present in Colorado to bet. Gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. I got to head to the Air Force Academy for some Air Force women's soccer if you are so inclined. I know what tonight's about, but if you're looking for some counter programming, Jeff Bennett and myself will have the call as Air Force takes on Montana at 6. If you stick around here on Extra Sports 1300 at 5:30, our coverage from Westwood One will begin. The NFL season is here, folks. We'll react to the opener tomorrow and get it more into the Broncos and the Buffs and the Falcons as we get you ready for a football weekend. Have a good one.